Welcome, folks, to this week's edition of Tech Sales Advice. I am, of course, your host, Chris White, and we have a particularly special show today. As you can tell, I am not alone in the Chris White studio, as my friend Joe mentioned. This is the LinkedIn Live show for technical pre-sales professionals and pre-sales leaders. And these are live conversation, folks. This is not pre-recorded. It's Monday at noon in the eastern part of the United States. And as I like to say, these conversations are unscripted, unrehearsed, and unpredictable. And I am joined today by actually a very, very good friend of mine, a gentleman who has, 3 decades experience in professional services.
That's right.
He is a principal with KPMG. He's responsible for their ServiceNow practice, a rather large organization. His name is Joe Koester. He's someone that I've known for about 2 decades, someone I'm delighted to call a friend, and someone I have a great deal of respect for. And we're going to be talking today about working with and working through system integrators and how we as software sales professionals can work better with system integrators, how they can work better with us, etc. Joe, my friend, welcome, sir.
Thanks, Chris.
This is the first time I've ever actually had somebody in the office with me. So this is a pretty special thing. So now I introduced you, but take a minute for anybody out there who may not actually know who you are.
Sure.
Do you mind just introducing yourself a little bit more broadly?
Yeah, happy to, and happy to be here, Chris. This is fun.
It's awesome.
Yeah. So I'm glad to be here in person, right? This post-COVID era when we can actually maybe get together.
But by the way, can I share? Folks, we made this decision to do this in person about 30 minutes ago.
Right.
So Joe called and said, "Hey, I just want to make sure we're on the same page." He lives about 20 minutes away, and he said, maybe we should have just done this in person." I'm like, "Well, it's not too late. Come on down." So this is literally I said these are unscripted, unrehearsed,
right,
and unpredictable. This is totally spur of the moment.
That's right. I just rolled in about 10 minutes ago.
I love it. So go ahead, share, sir.
So as you said, I work at KPMG, right? Big Four. I work in our consulting division, called advisory. And as you said, I've been in this kind of software sales ecosystem for 20, 25 years.
Yeah.
Working with the boutique for a good part of that, as smaller SI, and for the last 9 years working at KPMG specifically.
Gosh, has it been 9 years?
Yeah, it's been 9 years.
Wow,
I know.
It's
Remember
crazy.
That? Remember
we were probably at a camp out together. Yeah.
Gosh. So it's been a long time, right? And it's going fast, but all that time, been on the other side of the equation, right? So always working with clients, but always working either, with software sales professionals, sometimes against them. And we'll talk about that. We'll get into more details.
Yeah. But
always, there's always that equation, right? It was always kind of like 3 legs of the stool. The client, obviously, the most important, and then the software sales team, and then us as either a partner or an integrator or someone who's, an uninterested party, right, in the equation. So.
Yeah.
And it's been, listen, the market has changed a lot over the years, particularly the one that I'm in. But it's also been a very different experience working for a smaller integrator and boutique, and the leverage and you do and don't have there, and now working for a larger one, right? And that relationship and there's a lot of good, bad, and ugly in how we work with our software partners.
Yeah.
And as they have matured and as those companies have grown, I think it's gotten a lot better, frankly, in the industry than maybe the relationship used to be. So
that's great.
So I'm thrilled to talk about that. As you mentioned, been running our ServiceNow practice for the past couple of years, and that's a SaaS vendor that I'm intimately familiar with. But I think the relationship that we have with their software teams and how they go to market is going to be very similar to any other large software company, right? Yeah. Previously worked with IBM, worked with HP, worked with BMC, a few others along the way. So
that's awesome. I have so many questions I want to. By the way, folks, we do not see you out there. So but we've got eyes on the comments. If you do care to say hello, if you have any questions for myself or Joe, please feel free to ask. So let's begin with, if I'm a software sales professional,
Right.
what is valuable for me to understand about teams like yours, about individuals like yourself, about the system integrator that will help us both work better with you in your teams and meet our needs and achieve what we are trying to achieve?
So there's a lot to unpack there. Listen, I think the most important thing is the most important thing in life are relationships, right? So I think, I believe that with our clients, I believe that with people I work with, I believe that with my friends, right? And that's kind of what life's all about. And I think developing a relationship between, or having a relationship between the SI, someone like me, and the software sales rep and their team is really important.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Listen, we don't always have the exact same goals. I mean, you'd like to think that our goal is to do what's best for the client, but how I'm driven and ultimately compensated, or what I'm interested in doing, may not be totally aligned with the software sales rep.
Yep.
Right, who's interested in selling software.
Right.
And usually, they've got monthly and quarterly targets and numbers they're trying to hit. I, as an SI, and as kind of in my role, I tend to take a longer term look on the relationship. So, but understanding that and appreciating that, and knowing what each other's goals are, and then working together to achieve both goals, and then ultimately do what's right for the client, I think is really important. So for me, it's about establishing that relationship. And listen, every SI is different. We have part of our team. I'm a principal or a partner in the organization, and we have account teams on large accounts. We have sales reps that work for KPMG that are on these accounts, right? And so it can be a little bit complicated on our side. And then, depending on the software vendor, they may have a big team, right? That's pursuing opportunities in the account. So understanding kind of how you're built and how you go to market, ultimately what the other party's interests are, and then working, together, and then delivering to the client is what it's all about. So where I've seen it work really well is when, we have a personal relationship, and usually there's the software, client director or the lead on that side, and his team, the solution consultant, the sales engineers, or her, and then their team behind them, right? And they may have SMEs, they may have overlay reps, et cetera. And then so it's kind of, he or she is at the point, right, of that team. And then on my side, similarly, right, there'll be someone who's trying to sell a particular service, but then I've got a whole account team, right, and I've got to manage that on the back end too. So there's lots of complexities there. So a lot of times the rep may not understand, what I need to do on my end to kind of manage my side of it. And then a lot of times unless I ask, I don't understand what they're trying to do on their side and what they're trying to achieve. So a lot of it is just sitting down and having a discussion and asking questions, right?
Should one side or the other take the lead or be more proactive than the other? Or is it an it depends conversation?
I think it depends, but I feel like as an SI, I feel like it's my responsibility, right? And it is situational, right?
Yeah.
There'll be some accounts where, like, my firm is all over that account. We have C-level relationships everywhere, right? And if the sales rep wants access, they should approach me or us, right?
Right.
But it's not like an ego thing. It's not, so we've got the team, we have the account access. I'm interested in selling services around a particular software solution. So it's in my best interest to reach out to the rep, to reach out to his or her solution consultants, right? And build that relationship and then go together. Because listen, sometimes I spend as much time selling my internal team to get the access as I do directly with the client.
Now, when you say selling your internal team, on what?
On the solution that I'm representing within the firm. We're a big firm, right? We have all kinds of partnerships and all kinds of alliances, and some of them compete with each other.
So you're selling, in essence, in your case, you're selling ServiceNow in some cases internally, right, against other potential vendors, headwinds, et cetera.
Right. Right.
And so you're really both an advocate internally as well as an advocate with your clients. Because at the end of the day, your success is dependent on SuccessNow in this case doing well, right?
ServiceNow.
So
right.
thank you, ServiceNow.
Right. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So and here's the interesting thing is I hear software vendors and more specifically software sales professionals frankly complain about system integrators getting in the way, slowing things down,
Sure.
when in fact you have a vested interest in seeing them succeed. Right. So what would you say to a software sales professional maybe frustrated with a system integrator? What would your advice to them be?
So I think you have to understand the organization, right? If a software sales rep goes directly to a partner from our firm that owns an account, and that partner represents the firm across everything, right?
Yeah.
So if the ServiceNow rep or a Salesforce rep or whatever, you name it, goes directly to that partner is the gatekeeper, right, into that account. And they're interested in protecting the firm and doing what the firm wants. If they come to me, our interests are very aligned, then I'm the avenue to that lead partner and I'm the avenue to the account team, and then we can work together.
Yeah.
So I get my account team on board. I do the selling, I do the relationship building in the back end, right? And get them to see the value of the solution. Because listen, these lead partners on our big accounts, they're getting hit all the time from inside the firm, from my peers who all are trying to get access into the account, right? I want to meet with the CIO, I want to meet with the COO, and they protect those relationships, right?
Yeah.
So so if an outside rep goes directly to them, that's a tough road. If they come through me, because we're aligned, as you pointed out, then we go together and I'm their access in. So I think it's important to understand how the SI operates, and not all of them are operate like we do, but you got to find your advocate within the SI who you're aligned with, and then you can go.
Yeah.
But absolutely, listen, we've done like some breakthrough sessions with some of our software alliance partners, and ask them what their perceptions are of us, and they ask us what our perceptions are of them, right? And their biggest complaint is that SIs get in the way because we like to do assessments and do a lot of analysis, right, before a client buys, and that's a good way for us to tee up future work. Our perception is sales reps and their solution consultants are coin operated and very transactional, and they will just do whatever they need to do to sell software, and they'll cut and run, and then we're left with that client to go pick up the pieces or fix the mess, right? So like there's that, right? That's kind of the natural, and it's always been like that. But I think again, as software sellers get more sophisticated and understand the value of a long-term relationship, and not all of them get that, but the better ones do, then our interests become more aligned, and they may not just be trying to close a deal this quarter. Now, listen, there's always pressure. Right? I don't envy their role because, they may not be around. It's
a tough gig.
Right?
Yeah, it's a tough gig.
So there's a balance. But, ultimately, if a software rep takes a long view and is strategic, and that's how we want to be, I'll also go out of my way to help them achieve their goals, right? And get some deals done. And then we work together. And there have been accounts that I've been working with my counterparts, the software sales reps and their teams. And listen, the solution consultants a lot of times are our best friend, right? For years. We've been selling there for years. And had really great mutual relationships, right? Where we've both been very successful. But the role of the SC or the sales engineer, or that role in particular, which I know you're very interested in, of course, is one that I value highly, because a lot of times, listen, reps tend to come and go, but those solution consultants are usually there for the long haul, like we are, right?
Oftentimes,
and their tenure often outlasts the sales reps, but they're kind of caught in the middle too, because they're tied to the hip with the sales reps and they want to get the deal done, but they also they're usually a lot closer to the client, to the operations, like we are. So a lot of times our relationship and the buffer between us and the rep is the solution consultant. So those are people we regard very highly.
Well, and you, when we chatted, I think last week, you mentioned that a lot of times you'll see the SE find him or herself in a very difficult position because, again, they are just like you on the system integration side and the AEs. Everybody wants to do what's in the customer's best interest,
Right.
ideally.
Right.
But we all have our own personal agenda, right? We all want to hit our own number.
Right.
The SEs tend to err a little bit more on what's doing what's right for the customer, and they want to be technically correct, right? They want to be the expert
Right.
in the deal. Right. And sometimes the account executives get happy ears. Sometimes they just want to move to a successful close as quickly as possible. And so I can see where they may be caught in the middle. And by the way, I want to check. I see we've got Will Koester. That's a name. That's a name I recognize. Will, nice to see you, my friend. He happens to be Joe's son. By the way, folks, if you do have any questions for Joe or myself, please feel free to ask. If you sell through or with system integrators, this guy's a great guy to ask some questions of. So while we've got him literally here in the studio, do not hesitate. What advice would you give to a solution architect, a solution consultant, a sales engineer, whatever the term is, who maybe finds himself caught a little bit in the middle between maybe an AE who has an agenda and a system integrator who also has an agenda, and he or she is trying to find that right balance?
Again, I think it's about asking questions, right, and building those relationships. But it's a little tough because, I mean, listen, depending on the sales rep, sometimes they keep that engineer under their thumb, right? They're like, don't have a conversation without me. Don't talk to the SI without me. Don't talk to the client without me. So it can get a little tricky, but like I said, we've got really strong relationships with those sales engineers, and a lot of times, and a lot of those discussions get very technical, right?
Yeah.
Our team is really technical, and we're the ones implementing the software, and whatever promises are made, we have to live up to them. And I think the SCs and SCs take on that responsibility as well.
That's good. Yeah.
Right. So I think it's under the guise of making sure what we're positioning and what the sales rep is positioning and trying to sell, that like we're lockstep on it. Right?
Yeah.
That can be I think the SC could say, hey, let's get the SI in the room and let's talk through it with them and make sure we're all on the same page. So ultimately we can be successful in implementing what we're selling.
Yeah.
And if there's complex integrations, or if there's some, if we know some of the requirements are not going to be out of the box, that we're on the same page with how that's being positioned.
Yeah.
So I think it's a tough spot for the SE to be in, though, because the rep ultimately
really
has a lot of control. And listen, it depends on the organization too. Sometimes the SEs have as much or more power than the rep.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And a lot of time they have more tenure and more knowledge.
Well, it depends on tenure. It depends on knowledge. It does depend on the culture. And anybody who's listened to me or this show before, I call it the 5149 rule. What's the 5149? As an SE, I have an equal vote. I have an equal voice, an equal seat at the table, but I always give the AE the final vote. They have 51% of the vote. I have 49% of the vote, because at the end of the day, it's their neck on the line if we don't close a deal or what have you. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So, Joe, I just want to hit our pause button. I see a few other, sometimes SEs are doing research for a solution. Other times they're inquiring to find a solution. That's good. Nissim, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. My question, how realistic is it that an SI will recommend a solution that the SI is not formally partnered with? Great question, Nissim. Again, I hope I'm saying that right. Do you understand the question? And if so, how would you recommend that? Or how would you respond to that? Genie, my glasses?
Yeah, no. So not very often, frankly, right? I mean, I think there'll be times when we're asked, hey, does this software, will this fit my need, right? And again, I'm incented for it to fit the need because we want to implement that solution. But we're also on the hook if it doesn't. So I think what we'll do is we'll say, listen, not a great fit. if there's another technology that we represent that we think is a better fit, we'll point them in that direction. I'll pull in, a peer of mine who represents that, and we'll back out. Right. I mean, but if it's a solution that we're not familiar with or we don't have a formal alliance with, unless I've come across it and I'm aware of it just because of my experience in the marketplace, chances are I won't recommend it. I may say, hey, you could go look at these sometimes, because a lot of times the clients will say, well, if that won't work, if ServiceNow won't work for this, what do you recommend? Right. You guys are, depending on the relationship, you're a trusted partner of ours. What do you recommend? And then we'll go do a little research, and I may come back and say, well, because of our relationship with, say, Gartner or IDC or someone else, say, here are the top 3 vendors in that space. And if we don't work in that space or represent it, then that's about it. Yeah. But if we do, then obviously we'll take that conversation a bit further. Yeah. Does that help?
It does. This triggers a question for me. Because you are responsible for the ServiceNow business at KPMG, do your clients sort of assume that you are biased towards ServiceNow, and that if you're making a recommendation for ServiceNow, and again, this is not about a ServiceNow, this is just what you happen to be responsible for, right? Do you lose maybe just a touch of credibility because you represent because you're responsible for ServiceNow business, as opposed to maybe a colleague that you have that doesn't necessarily represent a specific product or a specific vendor?
Yeah, potentially, right? And we have to be careful about that, because our clients trust us because we're not a software vendor, right? For different reasons, right? I mean, we go to the software vendor for certain things, they'll come to us for certain things. So I have to be careful to not be biased, right? And to be honest about capabilities. Sometimes that puts us at odds with the sales reps, when they're promising or saying things, and the client comes to me and I'm like, no, that's not that, maybe next release, but that's not available right now. Things like that.
Okay. Right? Yeah.
So we have to maintain our objectivity. But listen, in my space with what we do, I mean, ServiceNow is the premier, really, right? So it's easier because there's not a lot of, in their core area, there's not a lot of competition or a lot of other options, right? So, but no, we have to maintain that objectivity, and that's why, for me, I'm part of a larger firm, right? Right. So as a firm, we are objective, and we have competing alliances and competing technologies. Yeah. So when the client comes to us, they're not coming to me, they're coming to the firm. So we have to be careful about that, right? Yeah. So there's a little bit of when they've decided on the technology, then, I can have a more direct conversation. Until that point, we need to maintain our objectivity. Yeah. No, it's good. Well, it's a little bit of dance, though. Yeah. Well, and it sort of occurred to me in that moment that, yes, you're a system integrator, but you do have a vested interest in ServiceNow. Sure. But I see what you're saying. Like you have to be the voice of reason, and you have to say how it is, whether that's necessarily in your favor or service, in this case. Yeah, I mean, listen, ultimately, I represent the firm, right? And I represent our client's best interests. Right. And then the software vendor that I work with comes third. Right. So, So it's first, it's client, it's firm. Right. And if all 3 of those are aligned, then let's go. Perfect. Right? Yeah, that's perfect. And by the way, let me push our pause button again. Folks, I'm speaking with Joe Koester. He is a principal with KPMG, responsible for their ServiceNow business. If you sell software with and or through system integrators, that's the conversation we're having. I invite you to say hello. I invite you to ask Joe any questions you might have. Yes, this is a little bit unusual. We're literally doing this from my office. I've never done this before. I might have to start, bringing people to the office a little more often. Although I don't have a budget to fly people in. Joe just drove down the street 20 minutes. So where do I send my expense for gas? Send your expenses? Yeah, we may have to talk about that. That's right. I want to. There's at the very least, there's 2 things that I want to touch on. We'll go in this order. You mentioned the firm a few times, and the fact that you work with a large organization. Right. You spent how many years? You mentioned boutique. You spent 15 years? Yeah, with a much smaller boutique system integrator. Right. Let's talk about the differences there. If I'm in software sales. Yeah.
how does working with a large integrator versus working with a small integrator and vice versa, how does that different? And what are some things that I can and should understand to make both parties more successful?
So it's a very different market, right? First of all, I mean, the boutiques, in our market that we work in, there's thousands of partners. Some are technology partners, but a lot of those are implementation partners, and 80% of them are boutiques, right? So
and just how many of them do you typically, like you as the big system integrator,
right.
are you bringing them to the party, or other vendor, or do you do most of your own work?
No, we
and
do
you
most of our
don't
work.
you don't bring boutiques into the party?
No,
Okay.
we typically don't. Right?
Okay.
Sometimes we'll end up working with them because the client wants to use them for a particular area, right?
Okay.
And this is commercial. I mean, Fed is a whole nother ballgame. But I worked at a boutique, and it was some of it was easier and some of it was a lot harder, right? Working in the ecosystem as a small boutique is very challenging. Your market is, you're going after kind of smaller clients typically,
yep.
right?
Yep.
If we were competing in a deal and I saw KPMG, Accenture, Deloitte, right, DXC, big vendors, I was probably in the wrong deal, right?
Right.
On the flip side, if I'm in a chasing opportunity and I know our competition are several other boutiques, I'm in the wrong deal, right? Just different value propositions. So
right.
Boutiques are less expensive typically. They're more nimble. They're more focused. That may be by geography. It may be by specialty. So it's very different. Now, for the sales rep, listen, they have more control, or they have more leverage over boutiques, right?
Yeah.
Boutiques are hungrier. They have to be a lot more aggressive in the industry to go get new opportunities and new deals. And it's tough because, a lot of these boutiques, they don't have long-term large relationships like the big SIs do in these accounts, right?
And it would seem to me that they're always trying to prove themselves.
Always.
You're only as good as the last project you did, right?
Yeah, the company I used to work for, I would spend the first half of my call just explaining who we were. Right. And trying to keep trying to get to someone to talk to me, right?
Yeah.
Whether it was direct outreach to clients or to the software vendor, right? Who probably never heard of me. And then it's okay. Now I know who you are. What can you do for me, right? And then how are you different than the 100 other boutiques?
So, and let me interrupt you right there. Okay. So when you were working at the boutique, if I'm hearing you correctly, you spent as much. It was more a model of you selling to the software vendor. Yeah. Then whereas now software vendors probably selling more to you. Is that
a little bit? Yeah, it's
okay.
Definitely, we definitely have more leverage as a large SI because of the penetration and relationships we have in big accounts, right?
Yeah.
And we're talking about enterprise. It's a different market, right? So boutique, think mid-market, right? Lots of transactions, smaller deals, more nimble, less lower hourly rate, et cetera. Right. But also, you don't really have the breadth and depth to go after anything big. So you can kind of end up being in a niche somehow. Now on the flip side, large SIs, we have leverage, right? Our clients know who we are. I don't have to explain who KPMG is, right? Or what we do. Sometimes I still do. They think we're an audit.
You're an accounting firm, right?
Accounting firm, right? But I also you have to be careful you're not chasing deals where a boutique is a better fit. And listen, the sooner we can find that out and help guide the client to that decision, the better off. So we're not wasting our time or the client's time or anybody else. So we typically, when I was with a boutique, there was a set of kind of commercial reps that I worked with. And listen, a lot of these large software organizations have matured where they have like enterprise reps that go after big accounts. Some of them are verticalized, right? So they're growing into those specialties. And then they have kind of maybe inside reps or just geo reps who cover a bunch of accounts, and they usually will have an SC who will do the same, right? Yeah. So boutiques typically work at that level. Large SI, we're working with the enterprise reps, who maybe have a couple accounts or are in a specific industry. And frankly, we bring things to the table that they need, right? So, but you see, there are more mature reps than others, and there are commercial reps who grow into the enterprise role, and they don't understand the nuances of, hey, an SI is different, right? We bring a lot of different value to the table.
Yeah.
We bring a breadth and depth of expertise. We bring, intimate customer knowledge, right? All that stuff that if they could figure out how to leverage it will be a benefit.
That's good.
So it's very different, right? Those two markets are very different.
Very different.
Yeah.
Very different.
Yeah.
I see a comment. I want to take a pause. Once a formal alliance is established, what's the best way to socialize? What is the best way to socialize the new vendor solution through the SI organization? Would it be more effective to educate the delivery team, the client-facing consultants, which I would classify as more of the sales types? Nissim, again, great question. Thank you for asking. Do you understand the question, and do you have a thought?
Yeah, I mean, again, it depends on the SI and how they're organized.
Yeah.
But we still spend a tremendous amount of time. So think about, big organization I work in. We have tax, audit, and consulting. So I'm in consulting, and then within consulting, we do all sorts of different things. So then, you get down and I'm in this little part, right? So our account teams, I mean, they are selling tax services. Sometimes they're selling audit services. And then if they do, we can't do consulting work because of the conflict of interest. So they represent everything the firm does. So, potentially hundreds of different solutions, a lot of them business, some IT, right? All over the place. So we spend a lot of time just continually educating the firm on what ServiceNow is doing, and ServiceNow, for anybody who knows what that product is, where they came from and where they are today, right? They have, hundreds of different capabilities.
Yeah, it's a platform.
Yeah, it's a platform now, right?
Yeah.
So and they're constantly releasing new capabilities. So we're always training and educating. And 10 years ago, a lot of our lead partners and account teams didn't know what ServiceNow was.
Right.
Now everyone does, but still, it's a lot of education. So I would say it's both, right? Ours is two-tier. We are constantly educating and enabling kind of the more the sales people in our organization. We are the technical delivery hub, the team that I run. But then we're also always spreading the word out to the rest of the firm about capabilities and getting other people within the firm to understand. So they're kind of pulling us through and into other parts of what we do, whether it's in cyber or in risk, consulting, or in HR consulting, or there's all these different areas we can work with. So we kind of do both, and again, how we're organized is probably similar to the other big four, but pretty unique when you compare us to maybe some other large SIs who may be very just technical consulting SIs or large MSPs, et cetera. But for us, we have a lot of different channels we have to continually enable and educate.
Well, and my takeaway from this is, as a software sales professional, as a vendor, by the way, we hate being called vendors. We're called vendors all the time, but
I hate being called vendors.
It's just a term we hate. But what I'm hearing you say, though, is the more that we can educate our system integrators and equip them to inform and educate others, not only their clients, but their counterparts internally. The more chance and more opportunity, right? And do you find that some of the software sales professionals you work with, that they spend too much trying to sell you as opposed to equip and enable you?
Yeah. If they don't know me or don't understand kind of our maturity with their products. You don't have to sell me, right?
Right. I'm already drinking the Kool-Aid.
Right. Like you said before, we're already aligned. Let's talk about how we go work with this client or go deliver this client.
Exactly.
Listen, and the one last thing I'll say based on that last comment was, do you train your kind of sales facing people as an SI first? Do you train your technical people first? Listen, nothing happens until you sell something, right? So,
amen.
So, we're always trying to, there's always pressure on our delivery teams to catch up to what we're selling, right? And what our partners are selling, our alliances are selling. So if you've got to make if you're taking on a new alliance and you're trying to figure out who to train first, train your salespeople first, right? Get the demand going, build
Absolutely.
the pipeline. You can always, and there have been times when we have leveraged third parties to kind of bolster our delivery capabilities in certain areas when we're starting, because listen, it's still a tight market. It's hard to go hire a bunch of experts and know what you're getting. So, so go create the demand, right? And then put some pressure on delivery. And then we always figure it out, right? I mean, we'll find the right resources, we'll get the right people trained, and we'll get the right people hired. So maybe just going back to that last comment, right? That's where I would focus first.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay. Again, folks, I'm speaking with Joe Koester. He is a principal with KPMG. He is responsible for their ServiceNow business. If you're a software seller, or you're a pre-sales in a pre-sales role with a software organization that works with and through system integrators, I welcome you to ask any questions. We're talking about how we can best work with and through system integrators. There's still a few more questions that are front and center in my mind. Something that just came to mind for me. I'm curious, and I bet some of the folks listening might be curious. How do you all sell? Do you have certain individuals within the organization that have a more discrete sales role than others? Or because before I got into pre-sales, I was a consultant,
right?
And I worked mostly with boutiques, and as a consultant, we were sort of told you're all selling all the time, but that's very vague, right? So talk a little bit and help those of us on the software side understand sort of your sales roles and some of your sales motions.
So I can explain ours. I honestly don't know.
You can't speak for all system integrators.
So we can't speak for all the size, but we do have dedicated salespeople that work in my alliance, and they get up and they live and breathe selling.
And are they called business development professionals? Like, do they have a specific title?
Yeah, they're called relationship directors, basically.
Okay.
Right? Aligned to a solution. We have other relationship directors that are aligned to accounts.
Okay.
Right? Account relationship directors. These are solution.
Yeah. So like an overlay in the software world, the equivalent of what we would call an overlay.
Right. So think of a big account. We'll have a lead partner who owns everything in that account. They're like everything that's happening, no matter what we're doing. Right.
A lead relationship director.
Right. Partner. They're a lead partner. Then they'll have what we call an ARD, which is a relationship director that's tied to the
account. Okay.
Yeah. So they own the account. Sales. Lead partner owns everything: sales, delivery, revenue, billing, everything. Right.
Got it.
It's like a P&L. They run the P&L, right? And they have an ARD. We have SRDs. We call them SRDs, but they represent ServiceNow or one of our other alliances. So they're interacting with these ARDs, right?
Got it.
And representing and they're industry aligned.
Yeah.
So they are 100% dedicated. They wake up, they live and breathe.
Got it.
In our case, ServiceNow, and some of them come from that ecosystem, right? Our sales, but they're not selling software, they're selling services.
Of course.
Right? Sure. So we do have a dedicated team, and that's common across our other alliances. But ultimately, they or I or anybody has to kind of get through and talk to and kind of get the blessing of our account teams, right?
Right.
Sometimes we go around them. Obviously, we like to be on the same page with them.
Yeah.
To leverage their relationship and their knowledge. And where it works really well and where we have tremendous success is where we've got our lead partners and our ARDs understanding, fully enabled, and then building relationships with the software reps and their SCs. And then we're part of that. So it's all of us working together.
Yeah.
Right. And that's where, because obviously our account teams, they're interested in the well-being of the client across everything we do and for the long term. Some of them have been working with these accounts for 20 years. Right? Yeah. So, we're all going to come and go, and they're going to be there. Right. So they're very protective. But if they realize what we're doing is valuable in the best interest of the client and we get their support, then that's where it really, the value comes in. So I would, what I would tell software sales reps and their SCs and their teams is, again, understand the SIs, understand how they're organized, because we're not all the same. But you can't do that until you sit down and have a conversation.
Exactly.
Right. I think one of the challenges we face too, and this is an interesting topic, is for me, like I have one software partner in Alliance that I'm very interested in selling. But the on the other side, on the Alliance side or the software side, they may have multiple SIs that they could potentially work with in an account.
Of course.
And if you take a Fortune 500 account, we're in there. All of our competitors are in there.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of boutiques in there.
Like a Bank of America or something.
Right. There's, 50 potential partners working in there doing different things. So, where I get frustrated is and where we kind of need to either have a breakthrough or not is when the software rep is like, I could work with you, but I might work with your competitor, and I don't want to share too much information. Let's just see who the customer picks. So basically, fight it out, and then I'll work with whoever wins. Right. So it's hard to be strategic and to partner with the software rep when they're playing neutral, and sometimes they have to. I get it. Right. But again, if we can get past that, pick a particular solution in a particular area to focus on, and get strategic, we have much more success. Whereas the rep kind of sitting back and like, I can't pick favorites, and let's just let the best SI win, and then I'll share it with you, right? It kind of creates some friction, as you can imagine. And some challenges. It's kind of the nature of the beast. But I think what I've seen is the more mature sales reps, AEs or client directors, they will kind of pick and they'll ride a horse, right? Because they know then they can get much more strategic with that SI and then go sell ultimately a bigger solution to the client. Yeah. Right? So
well, and you've used the term alliances a few times, and that's really what we're talking about here, right? Is truly building an alliance and being a true partner and going to market together, right? And it does require a high level of, I think, professional maturity. I think it comes back to the very first thing you said, building relationships, right? So this is not a game for, I think, people who are right out of this is not a game for people who are early in their career. For those individuals who are maybe still a little bit early in their career, what advice do you give to them?
I think cut your teeth, right? Listen, it happens naturally in the field, right? You don't come into a software company and immediately start working on their biggest accounts, right? And with their biggest partners in the ecosystem, right?
There's too much at risk. You don't know what you're doing,
right?
There's too much at risk, right? We early in our careers, we tend to have particularly when we start to get pretty good at what we do, our egos tend to get really big, and that's when we get ourselves into trouble, right?
Yeah, but I think, listen, all across, I mean, alliances are all over the place, right? And they're everywhere, right? And when I was at the boutique, we were typically working with more junior salespeople, right? Some of them fresh, either had moved from an inside to an outside sales position, or some of them had come up through some training programs within those software vendors, and the transactions were smaller and the risk wasn't as great of making mistakes, but we built some really strong relationships with some of the regional reps, and the sales organization, the commercial sales organization, and saw the benefits there too. So it doesn't have to be big SI, big accounts, right? $10 million deal. It can be smaller SI. It's still about relationships, right? And listen, people want to buy from people they like, and people want to sell with and team with people they like. Yeah. So a lot of it's just building relationships, going out, having dinner, right? Yeah. Spending time together, getting to know each other, getting to know that your family, right? Your kids, and just like you do with a client, you build a relationship like that with someone like me or someone in the SI, and they will be a great advocate, right? And absolutely, and will really help you succeed. So and that goes both ways. Yeah. Right?
People they like, people they trust, people they respect, right? So that's awesome.
Yeah, ultimately you have to deliver, right? On whatever you're promising, right? So,
Amen.
so a lot of it
And that
comes
goes in
from
both
experience.
directions.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, if I work with a sales rep and find out that they're telling me one thing and they're telling my competitor another thing and then telling the client a third thing and they break that trust
bond. Yep.
Yeah, then that's it. Right?
That's bad.
So
yeah.
they can still be successful, but they're not going to be doing it with or through me or my organization, right?
Yeah.
And it goes the same way. And our account teams and some of our people on our side of it, they're very protective of client access. Of course. So if you violate that trust, then it makes it hard, right?
Let's touch on that. You mentioned very protective, and I think a lot of times those of us in software sales feel like those gatekeepers
right.
are blocking. But I think there's very good reason for them to be protective. Do you care to elaborate a little bit on that? The motivation behind this notion of being protective of an account.
So listen, a lot of times it's because they don't understand the value that you're bringing, right? Just like a lot of times the clients may not understand the value of you, just another salesperson trying to sell something that I don't really understand and I'm too busy to entertain.
All the more important.
That's why find the routes, right? Like that's why it's so hard to go directly to our account teams who have a million other things going on, but find your advocates within the SI who are aligned with you, and they become your guys kind of through that process. But it's still a challenge. The
other thing that comes to mind too is you got to be, as a software sales professional, you've got to be prepared to play the long game, right? I think so many people that I encounter and work with, they're just looking for the quick wins.
Yeah.
Right. And I just don't think there's really any such. I mean, it's in some cases there are, but the kind of game that we're talking about, it's not a short game, right? No. It's playing the long game.
It's not transactional, right? But listen, the comp plan, the typical client director AE it's not sell this in 3 years. It's sell it this quarter.
Yeah, right? What are you closing?
So it's balance, right? And again, I understand that. We appreciate that. Not everybody, right? On maybe on our side, and that's part of my job is to make sure people understand, right? But you can do both, I think. And those who do become wildly successful year over year. Those who don't, right? They're not going to be around very long. They're going to maybe do a deal here, do a deal there, and then they kind of run out of steam. Right?
Sales is a self-correcting profession. There's no doubt about
brutal,
that.
Right?
Folks, I'm speaking with Joe Koester. He's a principal with KPMG. We've been talking about the relationship, selling with and selling through system integrators. Joe, if you can believe it, we've been at this for almost an hour. We've been at this for 50 minutes. I don't know, time flies. So I have just one or two more questions, and then we're going to land the plane here. Do you have to be somewhere at 1 o'clock sharp?
Okay.
Good thing, because you're already late if you do. I think we've talked a fair amount about some of the mistakes that software sales professionals make and some of the things that they can maybe think about and work towards in trying to work with system integrators. Let's turn the table just for a minute. What are some of the mistakes that system integrators make when working with software sales professionals, software vendors, and what can system integrators do to not become just viewed as roadblocks and obstacles?
So it's an interesting question. So again, I think it comes down to alignment and understanding of goals and objectives, right? So I think, listen, where we make a mistake is where we egos are always involved, right? So setting your ego aside, right? And number one, really understanding the marketplace and understanding the value that this particular software vendor rep is bringing to the table and taking the time to do that. And then understanding their objectives and goals. And we're constantly working with our teams to get them to understand that, listen, especially with ServiceNow, right? Like they're gonna get their deal. They're a force in our market, right? They're gonna get their deal. They're gonna go build their relationship with or without us. So it's in our best interest to do that together, as opposed to. And I've
Really
seen
well
it,
said.
right? I've seen examples of that where our account teams have been like, don't have time, not interested, got other fish to fry, and then and I'm kind of caught in the middle, right? And the rep's like, well, I'm gonna go find someone who will work with me, or I'm gonna go get my deal, and then we'll see you, and then it's a missed opportunity, right? So we, my job in my role is to try to eliminate those, right?
Yeah.
And to really be an advocate when I see a good fit and when I see there's value for our clients, to get our account teams to kind of like put down their barriers. And a lot of that is, when I first joined the firm, no one knew who I was. So a lot of it is relationships too, right? So, my ability to leverage those relationships and get people to listen and get them to the table to understand what we're trying to do, right? So, a lot of it is nuanced, and a lot of it is based on, if I had been here a year, my leverage with our partner community, these big accounts, was limited, right?
Yeah.
Because they didn't know I was. But now I've been here long enough, and I think we've established enough, and through enablement and training and internal, where I can be much more of an advocate, right? Break some of those walls. But I still think we don't do a good enough job of sitting down with our partners, our alliances, our software vendors, truly understanding the value they bring, their place in the market, how they can help our clients, right?
Yeah.
And then, connecting the dots. We know what our clients' top 5, top 10 objectives are, right? We know we have that access. So we can oftentimes help the sales rep make sure he's connecting his messaging to those, right?
Yeah.
If they've already moved to the cloud and trying to sell something that's tied to a cloud initiative that happened 5 years ago. Right?
Yeah, been there, done that. Yeah.
Right. Don't try to sell cloud, or this client's all they're focused on right now is cost cutting. So if you don't come with a message that talks about cost takeout, come back next year.
Yeah,
right?
falling on deaf ears.
Right.
Yeah.
Or regulatory and risk is really top of mind right now because of some difficult things this client's gone through. You better tie into that, right?
Yeah.
Or, so we have the ability to connect those dots. So I think we have to set aside some ego and some misconceptions, take the time to build those relationships, and then understand, right? Everybody we're working with, they have families to feed, right?
Exactly.
They have responsibilities. They have a comp plan. They have things they're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
And as long as we can all agree we're trying to do what's best for the client, we can find common ground.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, and that's as you were sharing, the thought that came to mind was giving the AEs, the sales reps with the software vendors, the benefit of the doubt. I suspect that there are times where it would be easy and natural for someone in a system integrator role like yourself to not give an AE the benefit of the doubt, because they've dealt with so many individuals who just are short-sighted and they're right. But I think if we can, to your point, if we can work hard to remember that look, they have a job to do, give them the benefit of the doubt, right? As I like to say, unfortunately, as a sales professional, we are, quote, guilty until proven innocent.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
well, listen, human nature is to put people in boxes, right? So
right.
You immediately,
right.
You work with a software vendor, you immediately get put in a box, right? And
You're right.
And that's not fair to anybody. So, so I think software sales reps recognizing that, and then being direct about it and saying, listen, you probably get calls all the time. You work with a lot of people. They all want access. They all want to come through you. Here's why I'm different, or just give me 10 minutes and let's just talk. Right. Yeah. It's good. It's just good sales, right? Is to build that relationship. So, yeah. And then on our side, it's, listen, we working with alliances, working with software partners is becoming more and more part of our business, and a more critical part. So, I think we're getting better at it. We still have a long way to go.
Yeah. Dude, this has been awesome. I did
talk about.
Yeah. When I woke up this morning, I didn't think I was going to have a guest in my office. Do we have any closing thoughts? Nissim, thank you for your observations. Folks, I hope you enjoyed this. closing words. You got anything? Any final thoughts? Anything we didn't touch on that you thought we would? Anything you care to share in closing?
No, I just think, listen, it's ecosystems are so different based on, who you work for, whether you're on the integrator side or whether you're on the software vendor side. Be a student of your ecosystem.
Amen.
Right. Be a student of your markets. Be a student, obviously, of whatever you're trying to sell, right? Of your products, whether
problems you solve.
Right. But then really be a student of your ecosystem. Understand the partners and alliances out there. Understand, where your company's invested in those relationships, and always be learning and getting educated, right? Because there's so much leverage out there. I mean, listen, it's hard to just go out there and sell on your own, right?
Amen.
And the really successful reps, and this is solution consultants, their teams, sales reps are the ones who leverage that ecosystem and leverage those relationships, right? And that will, no matter which side of the fence you're on, I think that'll help.
Amen.
Yeah.
That's great. Safe to say that anybody catching this either live or after the fact can reach out and connect with you on LinkedIn.
Sure, absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Folks.
Love it. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, man.
Good to see you, man.
This has
In
been
person.
Great. Yeah, indeed. This has been great. Folks, thank you so much for joining. If you caught us live or if you caught the recording, if you like these, of course, you can follow the hashtag Tech Sales Advice. Of course, you can go to techsalesadvisors.com to learn more. Joe, thank you. I hope you'll come back. We'll do this again.
Awesome.
Maybe once a year.
Sure.
And I don't know if I can pick up your trip, but we'll talk about that. Folks, have a good week. We'll see you again on the next Tech Sales Advice.
Yeah. See y'all.